You're listening to The Deep Dive. Today, we're really focusing in. We want to get you properly informed about someone truly pivotal, a figure who shaped a whole nation for decades now.
That's right.
We're taking a deep dive into Saeed Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader.
A hugely significant figure on the world stage.
Exactly. And our mission today really is to unpack his journey. It's quite a path from a religious student to, one of the most powerful leaders globally.
Yeah.
We need to understand the sources here to really grasp his influence, how deep it runs on Iran's policy, both at home and abroad. Think of this as your shortcut, maybe, to being genuinely well-informed about a key player. So let's get into it.
Okay. Well, what's really striking when you look at the source material is how his early life, it really set the stage. Everything kind of flows from there.
Right.
He was born July 17, 1939 in Mashhad, Iran, and crucially into a very religious family. His father was a cleric, quite respected.
So that religious influence was there from the start.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just background noise. His father actively encouraged his Islamic studies right from a young age.
And that education path, it led him deeper into religion, didn't it?
It did. First, the seminaries in Mashhad, his hometown. But then, critically, he went to Qom.
Qom, yeah. Iran's religious center.
Exactly. And it's there he encountered the key figures who really shaped his thinking, his philosophy, his politics.
And the big one?
The most important, without a doubt, was Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Ah, okay. The future leader of the revolution.
Precisely. Studying under Khamenei wasn't just learning theology. He was absorbing Khomeini's pretty radical vision for an Islamic government.
What specifically?
Well, Khomeini's teaching on velayat-e-faqih. That's the idea of governance by the jurist, the top cleric. This wasn't just theory for Khamenei. It became deeply ingrained.
So the blueprint for clerical rule.
Absolutely. It laid out how clerical authority could, and in their view should, hold ultimate power. And it's a blueprint Khamenei would meticulously follow later on.
So with that worldview forming, he wasn't just an academic. The sources show he got actively involved as things heated up politically.
Very active, yes. In the run-up to the 79 revolution, he became a really outspoken critic of the Shah, all through the 60s and 70s.
And that must have been dangerous.
Extremely. Speaking out like that carried a huge personal cost. He was arrested multiple times by Savak.
The Shah's secret police. Nasty reputation.
Very. He spent time in prison, even faced internal exile. But if you look closely at what the sources suggest, these experiences didn't break him. They actually forged his revolutionary credentials.
Hardened his resolve, you mean?
Exactly. Facing the Shah's repression firsthand, it fueled his commitment, made him a key figure supporting Khomeini's message, spreading those revolutionary ideas. That's really why he rose so fast after the monarchy fell.
And it was a rapid rise, wasn't it? Post-revolution, he seems to have stepped into key roles almost immediately.
Yeah, pretty quickly. He was a founding member of the Islamic Republican Party, served as Deputy Minister of Defense, became Tehran's Friday prayer leader, a very visible role.
And a member of parliament, too.
Right. And the climb didn't stop there. It led to him being elected president in 1981. This was after President Raja was assassinated.
A turbulent time.
Incredibly turbulent. And he served 2 full terms as president, so from 81 right through to 89.
Which means his presidency spanned the entire Iran-Iraq war, pretty much.
Exactly. That war from 1980 to 88 just dominated everything. But here's the crucial part to understand about his presidency. Even though he was president, the real power, the ultimate authority, still rested with Khomeini as the supreme leader.
Ah, so that structure was already in place.
Yes, and that set a really important precedent. It basically laid the groundwork for Khamenei's own eventual move into that higher role.
Okay, so that brings us to 1989, a massive turning point for Iran. Khomeini dies. Huge leadership vacuum. What happened next? How did they choose a successor?
Well, it was a moment of profound uncertainty. The assembly of experts, the body responsible, they moved pretty fast.
Yeah.
Now, traditionally, you'd expect the supreme leader to be a marja.
A top-ranking cleric, right, a source of emulation.
Exactly. But here's what's interesting in the sources. Khamenei was selected despite not quite having that full religious rank at the time.
Really? How did that work?
Well, it seemed it wasn't just about the religious qualifications. It looks like a more pragmatic political decision. Remember, Khomeini just died. The brutal war with Iraq had just ended. The assembly likely prioritized someone with strong revolutionary background, proven political experience, which Khamenei obviously had as president.
So political needs perhaps outweighed strict religious tradition in that moment.
It certainly looks that way. They actually amended the Constitution to allow it. It highlights just how significant his appointment was. And once he became supreme leader, the authority he inherited and has consolidated since is just vast. It's absolutely above the president.
Can you outline that power?
Sure. He commands the entire armed forces. That includes the regular military and, crucially, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC.
Which is a massive power center in itself.
Huge. He also controls the judiciary, all the state media, TV, radio. He has the final say on all major foreign policy decisions.
Wow.
And he effectively vets election candidates through the Guardian Council. This council also checks laws for Islamic compliance. So he shapes the laws and who gets to run for office. It's comprehensive control.
With that kind of power, his leadership was bound to face and shape major events. The sources point to some significant internal challenges.
Oh, definitely. There were the 1999 student protests. They were met with a pretty harsh crackdown.
And then 2009?
Right, the Green Movement, that was even bigger. Mass protests after the disputed presidential election. Khamenei very publicly backed the hardliner Ahmadinejad despite all the fraud allegations.
That just fueled the fire.
It absolutely did. It led to more unrest, more crackdowns. It really showed his intolerance for dissent on that scale.
And externally, the nuclear program has been central.
Constantly. His oversight of Iran's nuclear ambitions, the negotiations, it's been a defining feature. He was leader during the signing of the 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA.
And also when it fell apart.
Yes, and when the U.S., under President Trump, pulled out in 2018, that really ramped up the international pressure again.
Beyond the nuclear issue, his foreign policy seems very consistent in its messaging.
Very. You see this constant strong criticism of the United States and Israel. He frequently calls them enemies of Islam.
And regional influence.
He's overseen Iran's strong backing for groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, various militias in Iraq and Syria. That directly shapes the power balance across the Middle East.
And more recently, the Soleimani killing must have been a major event under his watch.
Absolutely. Overseeing the aftermath of the U.S. killing of General Qasem Soleimani in 2020, that was a moment of extreme tension. And now in the 2020s, his leadership is facing, well, a lot of pressure. Ongoing economic sanctions, which really bite. Major internal protests, over things like the hijab laws, but also just economic hardship. And there's a clear growing dissatisfaction, especially among younger Iranians.
So putting it all together, what about him personally? The sources describe him as consistently conservative.
Very much so. Conservative views on religion, politics, culture. He actively promotes this idea of Islamic resistance against Western influence.
And there's this image of a modest lifestyle.
Yes, that's often mentioned, especially in contrast to some other world leaders. But, and this is a big but, that perception sits alongside immense political and crucially economic power.
How so?
Through institutions like Saytad, that's the execution of Imam Khomeini's order. It's described in sources as this enormous financial conglomerate, a kind of holding company, ultimately under his control. So modest personal image, vast institutional power.
Which leads to this dual legacy you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. It really depends who you ask. For hardliners, he's seen as a stabilizing force. They might point to him crushing the Green Movement as proof he preserved the system.
But for others,
For reformists, dissidents, many ordinary Iranians, that same event and others like it paint him as authoritarian. They talk about the heavy censorship, the human rights issues, the suppression of dissent that have marked his time in power.
so he still has a base of support.
Oh, yes. Among conservative religious factions, there's still significant loyalty. But the challenge from younger, more reform-minded Iranians, people wanting change, that seems to be growing. It's a definite tension. And that connects directly to the future, doesn't it? This whole question of succession.
Right. There have been these reports, unconfirmed mostly, about his health not being great in recent years.
Yes, those rumors circulate periodically. And it naturally leads to intense speculation about who might eventually succeed him.
Any names often mentioned?
Well, speculation often centers on his son, Mujtaba Khamenei, or perhaps other very high-ranking clerics. But honestly, it's all speculation.
Nobody really knows for sure.
Nobody outside a very small circle, if even they've decided. That uncertainty about the leadership transition, it's a huge factor hanging over Iran's future and, frankly, the future of the region.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today on Sayyid Ali Hosseini Khamenei. We've really tried to trace the path of this absolutely central figure in Iran's system.
Yeah, one of the most powerful religious leaders anywhere, and someone who has profoundly shaped Iran for, what, over 3 decades now?
And understanding someone like him, as we've said, it's just crucial if you want to get your head around the Middle East, international relations, and where a major country like Iran might be headed.
It really is indispensable context.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Given Khamenei's incredibly long time in power, his enduring influence, and all this speculation about who comes next, what does his legacy, nearly 35 years of it, tell us about how resilient, how adaptable Iran's unique political system really is? And maybe more importantly, what could that mean for Iran and for all its neighbors in the years ahead?